Hey everyone, you're watching Conversations in Pop Culture. I am your host, Andrew Davis, and this episode is brought to you by my sponsors, Make Some Printing, the smarter way to print. I know printing your creative project can be confusing and stressful, but Mixum is here to make it easy. From their instant quote calculator that lets you get as many quotes as you want for free to their 24-hour customer service support, Mixum is here to make sure your printing experience runs smoothly from start to finish. And right now, you can choose from a range of premium printing options and materials. And the company has also printed so many successful Kickstarter campaigns. A bunch of them you've even heard about on this very show. And they currently offer services in the United States, Canada, Australia, and the UK. And Mixum can print and reach your audience anywhere in the world. So if you're ready to print smarter, not harder, head over to Mixum.com. And right now, they're running a promotion where listeners of my show can drop my name, Andrew Davis, in the message tab of a current order to get a 5% discount on their first order. So that is mixam.com. Again, type my name, Andrew Davis, in the message tab of your current order to receive a 5% discount on your first order. Also, and I have these bad boys up. I have my metal cards that came in a few weeks ago, and these are up on eBay. This one is limited to 50. So you could go buy that if you like metal cards. And also you can buy this one, which I have about 54 left on the Kickstarter. So you can pick that bad boy up on eBay and help support this show. And so without further ado, I have with me Sam Carter. So welcome to the show.
Hey, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for the discount as well, because there's a big chance that I'm going to use Mixum to print my comic.
Yeah, no, Mixum really does print nicely, and they got some cool stuff going on. I still think they're working out where they can print and ship out directly in certain companies, and not companies, countries. Wow, it's been a long.
Oh, I think I lost you.
Yeah, I'm back. I'm back. It happens, but
Good.
Mixum's doing that, and I think they're still working out the details of that. But
Mhm.
that's something to look out for. But enough about my printing sponsorship and all that stuff. You know, they're really great. They also have a really cool digital proof concept. But you have a Kickstarter that's launching on the 22nd of March.
March 22nd, that's right.
And it's Final Boy. And so before we ruin the story for everybody, and before it becomes public, what is the basic premise of the comic?
Right, so the basic premise is Final Boy is the slasher comedy, and we follow Isaac Lambert as he's trying to survive a single night of terror on a college campus because there's a slasher on the loose. And but who can he trust when everyone around him is a suspect? Because we don't know who the slasher is. So it's inspired by a bunch of slasher movies that I'm really passionate about. I've been daydreaming about this project for 2 years now, and it's finally getting made.
Yeah, because it's very interesting because you haven't taken a traditional approach to this project. Where in the first issue, and I'm going to spoil it a little bit, we don't see much of Isaac at all. I don't think we see any of Isaac. And that's what's super interesting is that we get exposed to sort of two kids trying to hook up. One of
Yeah.
them is sort of a player, the other is sort of, I guess, trope sweetheart who's a little unsure but wants to go the distance a little bit. And so, what was that like in really building out this story? Because we're getting snippets of that as the introduction, but then it's sort of expanding outward as a slasher is going on a slashing spree at this university.
Right. So this issue is called Opening Kills. So I kind of think of it as the opening scene to a horror movie, a slasher movie. And there's some really great openings to slasher movies like Ghost Ship, Scream, that comes to mind. Several of the Scream movies have terrific openings. And I really got to thinking about what makes a great horror movie opening. And I believe that it's because the good ones are self-contained. They're almost like short films in and of themselves. And you're going to hear me talking about movies a lot during this because Final Boy is very movie inspired. I wrote it initially as a movie and then it became a comic script. And I changed it enough to really fit the medium of comics. But yeah, this is the opening scene to a scary movie, and we got the traditional, victims and the slasher that we're introducing. But there's a twist at the end that I don't think many people will see coming. that's pretty funny. So I'm excited for people to react to that.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about that twist because I
Right.
want you to be shocked. It's a little disturbing. It's not. I view your book more as sick and twisted right now than horror, but I enjoyed reading it because I got a preview copy and it's something I didn't see expecting at the end. So I'll leave it at that. But we're going to get into all this. But
Glad
you
you like it.
mentioned movies, and one of the things is that I'm not a big horror guy, but obviously I'm a big James Bond guy.
Mm.
And the James Bond openings are very traditional and they're very memorable. And the opening can make the movie. And so, what is this like? Because I watched animes where the first episode, and the anime that I'm thinking about is Full Metal Alchemist. That first episode of Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood sets the entire tone and
Mhm.
introduces all the characters. And so, what is this like? Because you're treating your comic book like a movie more than a comic book, and that's a very different writing style. It also creates a different storytelling vibe, and it's kind of nice to read a book like that.
Yeah, I really love comic books that are cinematic. You know, like it feels like you're watching a movie, reading a trade or something. And I also don't like it when comics write specifically for the trade. So I wanted to find a nice balance of that, where you can read it all at once, or you could read an issue and enjoy it and then remember what happens before you read the next issue, like a month later, because there's time that comes out between comics and you got to plan for that when you're writing. Some writers that I really loved that did like the cinematic writing for the trade really well were Brian Michael Bendis. I grew up reading and collecting the entirety of Ultimate Spider-Man. I really love that comic series.
We're going to talk about that too.
Okay, good. Yeah, I loved
You're
it.
going to hate me in about 5 minutes, I promise.
Oh, you don't like it? Oh no.
Oh, no, 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 no. I have two Ultimate Fallout 4s in my basement,
Oh, okay, good.
and I
Yeah.
got them for free. So
Oh man.
people,
Uh,
people really hate me when I tell them that story. So it's all right. I'm giving permission for everybody to dislike me for the next hour
oh
because
no,
of that.
just impressed. But yeah, it's I that was the first comic series that I collected completely. Like I have all 150 issues, however many of those are. I think it's like 145 or something. And yeah, I love that series. It means a lot to me. And the dialogue is so great in that series. It's no secret that Brian Michael Bendis is a great dialogue writer. And so I wanted to come up with my own way of writing dialogue that's unique to me, but also takes inspiration from him and some other great dialogue writers. So I think the second issue is basically all dialogue, and we're introduced to the main cast in the second issue. So I'll say that much about it, that we got the opening scene and then the introduction to the main cast in the second issue. And I'm excited for that coming up.
Because it's kind of nice when you just get introduced into sort of what happened, and obviously the title is Opening Kills, and there's not much that we know what's going on except, well, two people get killed. I don't think that that's a secret. It's pretty obvious when you have a slasher film, comic book, that people are going to get cut, they're going to die.
People are going to
And
die, yeah.
if you have an opening title called Opening Kills,
Mhm.
and the book has three characters and
Yeah.
there's an S on the kills part of it, I'm not ruining too much. I don't think that that's a big spoiler, and if I spoiled it, I'm sorry.
Right.
And
That's not the spoiler of the issue, though. The spoiler is the ending, which we're going to keep a tight lip on. But I'm excited for people to see that. Yeah, definitely, you can't keep that a secret with a title like that. But I wanted to throw something else in there that people go, oh my gosh, at the end of the book, you know, something big happened.
yeah, but what I really like about your book is that, we get that typical college date night, guys trying to hook up with a girl, and you really hit Scott and Haley really well. And
Thanks.
it has very much sort of a 90s vibe to it. You know, I'm 29. I think you're around my age. Maybe you're a little bit younger. I don't know.
A little younger, yeah.
But you get the sense that it's a bit of a 90s. I kind of find like a Boy Meets World type of settings to some degree is your book.
Thanks.
And what was that like really hitting that? Because it's a very peaceful environment. It's also a very fun environment. And then, well, it takes a very dark turn, and really all these two characters want to do is just have a fun night and having sex. And well, that turns violent. So
Yeah, well, I'll let you in on a little secret. I'm kind of a freak, at least to people who don't know writers. I'm a bit of a freak. And what that means is that I write down things people say. Like I keep a notebook with me everywhere I go, pretty much, or the notes app on my phone. I listen to what people say. And if I think, oh, that would look really good on paper, sound really good in a story, then I write it down and I use it. So a lot of those things that you'll hear or read in this story, these 7 issues, are things that I've heard in real life. And I think that's the thing a lot of writers do. I don't think I'm particularly weird in that area, but I definitely want the dialogue to feel really natural. And the way to do that is to be a good listener in real life.
there's a saying where good writers, I don't know if you ever heard this, and it was by a professor by the name Paul Levitz who actually told it. I don't know if you know who Paul Levitz is. By any chance.
Doesn't ring a bell, sorry.
Paul Levitz was the president of DC Comics. So yeah, it's a good name to know. But he was a professor of mine when I was in college, and he taught a class, and he said good writers, their minds are like Velcro, where everything sticks to Velcro. And
Mhm.
it's the idea that you never know when you're going to need to pull something out of your brain and whether you write it down or not. But it's very interesting because obviously I interview a lot of artists, I interview a lot of writers, and you're the first person who's openly said that, saying, well, I write things down what people say. And
Yeah.
then, obviously you might put a word or two in there, but you're getting their tone down. And it
Mhm.
does reflect because I know a Scott, I know a Haley in this book. And it's nice and it's very refreshing, I feel, when I'm like, man, this is a relatable character. I know exactly who this girl is. I've seen this girl on my college campus. I've seen a Scott on my college campus. I might have wanted to have been Scott on my college campus.
Right. Yeah.
And I think it's kind of nice when that happens. And because it feels real, this book, if that makes any sense.
I definitely wanted it to feel real, and that's why I take inspiration from real life. But yeah, I think it was I don't have a brain like Velcro, unfortunately. I think it was Tom King that said something like, if I come up with a good idea, then I don't need to write it down because if I forget it, then it's an idea not worth remembering. I don't quite agree with that because I have to write down all my good ideas or else I forget them. They just get filled up with other ideas, my brain.
I'm very similar, and what I find, and I don't know if you find this as writing, is that sometimes I'll write down an idea, and then I'll write down another idea, and then I'll write down a third idea, and then somehow all three of those ideas become one.
Mm.
Where I want to throw an idea on paper, and even when I'm writing an interview, I mean, I have questions, I have talking points. It's because it's not that the point is I'm going to forget the point. It's that sometimes when you write something, you're like, oh man, there's a better way how to write this, or a better way how to present it, or this idea in my head made sense, but when you put it on paper, this makes no sense. And you almost have to workshop it through to some degree, I feel. And that's how I function. Because sometimes if I say, oh man, I want to tell a story about a submarine and a submarine goes rogue, that is something I'm not going to forget. But if I come in with like a crazy idea, I want to put that down there on paper because there's going to be a point where I'm just like, is this even viable? So I don't know if that's also part of it as well.
Yeah, definitely what helps me is going on long walks. That's where I get all my great ideas. Because I'll get a nugget of an idea, but I need to really be able to daydream about it, think it through. Um, and so that's how I come up with my ideas, long walks, exercise.
Yeah, I have a different solution now. I come up with ideas, and a few
What's
people
that?
know exactly how that occurs. 4 in the morning, a little hungover, a crazy, stupid idea comes into my head. I'm like, oh, this could actually work. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And then,
cool.
then that's how I do it. And then also a little alcohol sometimes sparks something for me. And
Hmm.
that's how I function as a writer. And but also sometimes, I just am really immersed into something too. Like if a certain topic is fascinating, I get immersed into it.
Oh,
And
same.
it's just one of those things, I forget what I was super interested. So I just got into tobacco trading cards, and I'm super interested in them now. And there's so many different things going on with them. And I know it's slightly off topic, but like you start diving down a rabbit hole, and you're like, oh my god, this is super fascinating. And hopefully they're going to be coming tomorrow because I'm definitely going to be showing them off. And they're awesome. And then you're trying to figure out like who's involved in all this and even how this happened. And some of this stuff like came out 10 years ago, which is crazy. But it's a whole big history. And then like 9 hours later, I'm like, it's 4 a.m. What? Like,
Yeah.
But because this is one of the things that is also really cool about your book, and to bring it full circle, and why I bring all this up, is that you've hit that humor where they're like talking about, doing it in the car, getting a hotel room, just paying for the hotel, going into the woods. Scott sort of gets cock blocked by Haley's mom. And then they're just like, let's do it. And it's that humor and the idea of the urge and being a stupid 19, 20-year-old, 18-year-old kid. And that's also something that I think is great. And it's just like sort of the dry and realistic humor. And that's another thing about your entire book is that, as I was saying, it feels like it could happen. And we all know these characters, and it's very reassuring. I don't know how to explain that to somebody. Like, I read a fantasy comic, and it's fun, and I'm enjoying it. But at the same time, I know it can't happen in real life. And I like to read things that couldn't happen, but I also want to read something that can happen. And so that's something that's super cool about this book.
Yeah, the way to really tell a story, in my opinion, is to ground it in characters. Characters always need to come first. I came up with the concept for Final Boy a while back, and the concept was so intriguing to me because it's a story that really grows and evolves. There's a premise, and then there's a premise on top of it, and then another premise. The more you get into the story, things really change, and it ends up becoming kind of out there, a little outlandish, a little fantastical. But I always wanted it to be grounded in the character's journey. Especially every single scene needs to be about character work and the dialogue.
Yeah, and also what I like at the same time is obviously they're doing it, and pretty much that's where the slashing happens.
Mhm.
And what I find so interesting is that you've taken a different approach to the slasher, where I view this sort of as two stories that are going on in this issue. It's Scott and Haley hooking up, and then it's the slasher killing them. And while the stories are connected, they are separate. And you have a very interesting slasher. Yeah, and I don't think I've ever remembered seeing a slasher who uses a bow and arrow and a spiked baseball bat. And not I don't think that's also ruining much either, because
Mhm.
that's not the shock value. If you're shocked by a slasher using a bow and arrow, I'm sorry, you need to up your shock level a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, but it makes it different because it's not traditional. We have Jason, we have Freddy Krueger, and they're using knives, and they're using possibly a baseball bat, but not a bow and arrow. And
Right. I
it's a
will,
whole different level if you start thinking about what could go wrong.
I will correct you there. In the 2009 movie Friday the 13th, the reboot, Jason does use a bow and arrow in one scene.
I stand corrected. I am not a big horror guy, so I
That's
did not see that. So I just don't remember one. So if there was one, obviously I'm willing to admit that I don't know everything. But continue because it is
okay.
still out there.
Oh, like what you said earlier, when you get an idea for something, you get really invested in it, like your tobacco trading cards. I got very into slasher movies. I watched so many of them, some that I had never heard of, and I thought I was a big horror fan from the 80s because I wanted
I'm going to
the
stop you. You were doing research.
research. Yes, exactly.
Research.
Watching movies in my pajamas. I love my job. But yeah, it's I wanted to take inspiration from every slasher movie that I could possibly watch because I wanted this to be the ultimate slasher story, one that makes like incorporates all the tropes, all the elements of the genre into one new original story. So you'll see references and things in there to a bunch of things. even like the Banana Splits movie, stuff like that.
And obviously, it gets graphic. What you can do if you shoot somebody through a bow and arrow in their face is
Right.
very cool. What you can do with that, and I'm going to let everybody's imagination run on that. And also, just the way how it goes, and just even the visual impact is very cool. I very much equated that scene to being very much graphical, like Attack on Titan has in some scenes, where it's like that, where I don't think my favorite director, Tomino, who's a Gundam director and basically created Gundam, would approve of that scene. Um,
Wow.
but
Yes.
I mean, it's a pretty graphic scene, man. Like,
Yeah, the artist Marlon Souza and the colorist Danilo Leal, like they really nail the gore in this. It's incredible what they're able to do. And frankly, I'm very happy that they're okay with drawing this stuff.
and what makes it really cool though is that Scott, even in that scene and in his predicament and suffering, is very much telling Haley to get out of there. And
Mhm.
that's even crazier in some degree. The fact that what happens is that he's still being, I guess, a guy trying to protect the girl. And that adds a level of psychology to some degree as well to all this, and even just the mentality of that. And I don't even know if that's a trope or what that is referencing, but clearly that adds a different level on how you can read this as well.
Yeah, I wanted every character to be well-rounded, even if they're only in for a few scenes, if that makes sense. I wanted characters that you think they're archetypes of some kind, but then they do something that surprises you. And I think you'll find out that's kind of the point of the story and of these 7 issues is that characters can surprise you when you put them under pressure.
Yeah, and then obviously there's a very interesting ending, and I'm sure I'm going to have you on for issue two when issue two comes.
Love to.
But we're not going to talk about the ending, but I do want to actually talk a little bit about the psychology that's going on here
Mhm.
because we don't know much about the slasher beyond the fact that he or she or it is slashing. I
Mhm.
don't want to make any judgments. It could be any of the three. And I don't say that not to be politically incorrect or anything of that nature, but we don't know anything about the slasher minus the fact that the slasher killed 2 people.
Mhm.
Um, but what is that like even to go down? Because this slasher is getting close and personal. It's not anymore just killing somebody for the sake of killing. There's obviously pain inflicting and going down that route. And we don't know if these kills are personal kills or just an opportunity presented themselves. And what is that like to really play that out and then build upon this? Because this is sort of the start of the killing spree.
Right. So this is a murder mystery, this series. So I'm gonna do my best to avoid spoiling who it is, but we haven't really met any of the main cast yet, so I don't think that's possible. But I will say that the slasher seems to be killing people for the reason most slashers do, like Jason. Um, Jason's a good example. You know, he sees a couple doing an impure thing and he wants to off them for it, right? But there's a different motive going on with the slasher, a much more interesting motive. And I'm excited for people to get to that. I think it's in issue 6 and 7. I'm really particularly excited for people to get to those issues because it's pretty wild what we learn.
And then obviously, I mean, this is just the opening act, and there's a variety of other characters out there. Obviously, the slasher is still alive, but
Hmm.
we don't really dive into, and we don't see any of Isaac in this entire story, and all we know is that Isaac has to survive another 6 issues,
Right.
more or less, and a night of horror.
One more night.
And we don't know really why he needs to survive it. He's trying to figure out what's going on. And so, what is that like to not even introduce the core of the story yet?
Yeah.
and have it that we don't even know who Isaac is. We don't know who Isaac can trust, who Isaac can't trust. All we know is that there's a slasher that obviously may or may not be targeting Isaac directly, may be targeting somebody close to Isaac, and obviously he's going to be targeting people in the main cast and trying to take them out systematically.
Yeah, those are all good theories. So I want this first issue to be self-contained. You know, you read it, you get a beginning, middle, and end. But it also is a beginning. It introduces you to the concept, to the stories, the story that's coming. So yeah, we don't meet the main cast yet, but that's what issue 2 is dedicated to. And that's a very fun issue to write, just introducing a bunch of people in a natural, organic way. I think issue 2 is one of the biggest challenges of writing this. I'm 14 issues in, by the way. I've written 14 for the series. Uh, Possibly might make it that far, but at the very least, we will make it 7 issues, hopefully.
So let's even talk about even just building out comics because I'm a comic guy and I haven't read a comic yet at all. I don't know if I'm going to, and my background is more on the comic book investing side. I know how to evaluate a book on a variant level, on a story level,
Yeah.
on from an investment standpoint. And I read a lot of comics, buy a lot of comics. I go to my comic store at least every other week at this point because it's just easier that way. It's one
Yeah.
less trips. COVID has sort of ruined me, and then I buy a bunch of comics offline every month, and they're just shipped right to my door. And I love it because it's simpler and it's cheaper. And
Mhm.
the cheaper something is, the more I can buy, right? But one of the things that happens in comics is that you get your first issue kicked off, you're funded, people will back a first issue or buy a first issue, but then the trick is how do you get them back for a second issue, a third issue, a fourth issue? And Kickstarters are slightly different. But what is that like? Because you sort of said it, I think you hit on something where your first issue is almost a one shot that directly connects in to the next 6 issues.
Right.
And so your second issue is almost a brand new start after you get past your first issue in a lot of ways, where somebody technically doesn't have to read that first issue. And it creates a very interesting experience and probably a weird opportunity for you. And I'm curious, even if you've thought about that or what that is like for you, because I think you're brand new to the entire Kickstarter game, right?
Yeah. Oh, you got me pegged. I'm new. This is my first Kickstarter, so it's a little nerve-wracking, but I I've done so much research over the past few months on how to do a successful Kickstarter. I hope I'm doing it right. I've had some good mentors that have helped me, so I appreciate that. But yeah, the first issue, self-contained, I wanted to give people a little mini story as a part of a larger story, so that they're satisfied at the end of the first issue. But I'm hoping that twist at the end, and the quality of the work, the dialogue, the character work, the action, the violence, and the art, especially amazing, incredible industry level art by Marlon Souza and Danilo Leal. I'm hoping that all will bring people over to the second issue. And the first issue is always going to be available for people when they're buying the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh issues. So people can always catch up. So hopefully, the concept of the story, the art, all of that will keep people coming back.
Yeah, no, because it's very interesting because it's a big issue, and I had Ed Davis on, and we were speaking about this, where everybody wants an action issue, and sometimes you have an issue in your comic where no action's happening and no explosions happening or anything like that
Yeah.
nature. And so what Ed did is that he had an issue, and he actually combined it, issues 2 and 3 together because
Mhm.
he knew one of them was sort of weaker than the other as far as action. And then I had Mike Tiner on, and I don't know if you know the two guys I'm mentioning, and they're not going to mind me dropping their name, but Mike Tiner did Black Jackets 4 and 5 next to each other. Now I think he could have done 4 and 5 by himself, but one of the things is that he just felt that hey, there was no good cutoff point, and I want somebody to read both these things at the same time. And so this is why I bring this up because you've created a very interesting experience, I think, where So you'd be like, hey, I don't need to read issue 1 to get into issue 2. And
Mhm.
it solves a problem in a lot of ways. And so that's something that I think is just super interesting. Not saying they shouldn't buy issue 1. That's not what I'm saying, everybody.
I got
But
you.
no. I'm clarifying for my entire audience when they hear this in the next week when you launch and I start sharing it. But it is the idea that you've created a second starting point and a second jump on point, and that is something that is tricky in comics. There's
Mhm.
a reason why every 6 issues, DC, you have 6 issues of Batman. On the 7th issue, you could jump onto the series, and you don't need to read the other 6 issues. And you created that without having to do 6 issues, so super interesting.
And I'll say this much: Final Boy is going to be an ongoing series, hopefully, and each 7 issues is a storyline, and each 7 issues sorta is able to stand on its own while also building off what happens previously. So I really thought about that issue that you brought up, where like people need a jumping on point. So issue 14, that's going to be a jumping on point for new readers as well, if we get that far.
Yeah. It's always that thing of just figuring out how you get that far, and
Mhm.
Kickstarter is fascinating. But the nice thing about Kickstarter is that if a project doesn't work or it doesn't fund, you can come back legitly a day later, 2 weeks later, or 5 months later to that project and relaunch it and tweak it. And I was at that point in mine. So I was saying,
Yeah.
maybe I'll come back in a month or two to this project and make it better and revamp it and all sorts of stuff. And that's kind of the cool thing about Kickstarter is that Kickstarter allows you to come back to it if it doesn't fund, and you can get another bite at the apple, which is actually super, super cool. And also, you don't lose money if you don't fund. Where,
Mhm.
I mean, obviously, you have your expenses for whatever it costs, but you don't have to pay anybody any money. Or in Kickstarter is free because they take a percentage off your Kickstarter, which is also very helpful in that realm. Where it's just that there's no economic risk. Is all I'm going to say, but I do sort of want to back out of your project that's coming up, and I am curious about horror comics in general because one of the things that is happening now is that places like Boom Studio are doing a lot of horror comics. We had Deceased with DC Comics that did very well for DC Comics, and it was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed Deceased and everything that did. And I'm curious, and indie companies like I think Second Sight Publishing is really big on horror. Scout's getting big on horror. And so, why do you think that this sort of has jumped up now and has become very popular? Because now you're in that genre too, and you're in a niche genre, which is slashers.
Right. So I think American comics were hit very hard by the Comics Code Authority. And that's why for so many years, even after the Comics Code Authority went away, uh, there weren't that many slasher or horror comics. But now we're at the point where indie comics is such a big thing, and we don't have those restrictions, those regulations on us anymore. Now we can really get to some good horror comics. If you look at Japan, like you love anime
Yeah.
and manga, I'm assuming there's been so many good horror mangas for decades. And now I think America is just kind of catching up to that level.
Did you also feel that, and I'm going to be very nice, and look, I'm assuming you enjoy things that Marvel still puts out. I
Oh,
enjoy things
absolutely.
DC puts out. Not everything is good. I think we can agree. Yeah, on the big two, they have a few hits every year, and they have a bunch of stuff that just flops. But I also think, and I'm curious how you feel, where there's in the last few years, at least for me, DC, Marvel, even Image haven't been delivering what they used to deliver.
Mhm.
The same way where there used to be major events, there used to be major things that mattered in those universes. And I don't think it's political. I think it's just laziness. I think people have run out of ideas.
I think it's just fear of risk, honestly.
It could be that too. It could also be that these things are now corporate entities. And the further you climb up a corporate ladder and you have to answer to shareholders, the more complicated it gets. Also, it's the idea that you want to screw up your movie side. That's bringing in billions, if not trillions of dollars. I'm sorry to say, but HBO Max is where DC Comics lands,
Mm-hmm.
and Disney Plus is where Marvel lands. That is complicated when you have these characters and then you do something controversial in a graphic novel or a comic. Turning Captain America gay, for lack of a better word, it can be a very dangerous position for Disney and Marvel in a lot of ways because it can screw up a lot of things on the big screen. And I think that that's part of it. But with horror, a lot of this is brand new, and I'm curious how you feel. Where do you feel like a place like Boom is like, hey, we could do 4 issues of something that's killing the children, and this is brand new, and there's no source material, and we don't have a TV deal, and if this thing fails, cost us 30 grand. We don't personally care. Do you think that since those are smaller companies, they could take more risks, and they also don't have TV, and they don't have to answer to shareholders? Do you think it's that, or do you also think that there's something else going on?
Yeah, well, Marvel and DC are dealing with characters that have been around for some of them for 70, 100 years. So people come into those stories with a certain amount of expectations. And that's partially why I'm not really looking forward to writing for either of the big two, is because those stories have been done so much, and there's very little to do with those characters that's new. And also, there's so many limitations on what you could do. But with the indie comic scene, there's no limitations. I think Kickstarter is the place for the most creativity, really, because there's no regulations, there's no real rules. You can put any kind of comic out there you want, pretty much. Um, and that's just allowed me to tell this really absurd, wacky horror story. It's going to get pretty absurd in later issues and in this issue as well.
Yeah,
But
I agree where Kickstarter is a place where creativity is going on. And obviously, I have friends in the industry. I have friends who have worked for DC and Marvel. I've interviewed a lot of people who have gone in and out. And I'm not going to say who's who, but I've known people who work for Marvel and for DC, and they are miserable. And they're like, yeah, there was no creativity. But also, what happens sometimes, and I don't know if you're a wrestling fan, by any chance, are you a wrestling fan?
not particularly, but I like watching it occasionally.
So what WWE did, and this is what I think has happened on the Indies, is that they signed a bunch of indie talent from the Indies. They were in NXT for a year to about 18 months, and then they cut 80% of that indie talent and just took the 20% with them. But some of the people who went over to WWE knew might have been cut. But the reason why is that when they come back onto the indies, their rates increase. So if you've gone into Marvel or DC as a writer or as an artist or as a cover artist or as a colorist, and then you come out, your rate might increase by 20, 40, $50 a page. And now all of a sudden, when you're doing a 24-page book, you're talking a significant of $600, $700 more per book. And I think that's something that's happened, and people tolerate the misery because they know when they go back to Kickstarter, they're more expensive or their project's going to be more respected. Because if I say, hey, I used to work for DC and I wrote 30 issues of Teen Titans, and now I'm writing something and it's halfway good, so you're like, oh, this is former Teen Titan writer Andrew Davis, somebody's going to know my name. So I think that's part of it as well. And now all those guys coming into Kickstarter and be like, hey, this is what we want to tell.
I would like to revise my previous statement. Marvel DC, I would love to work for you guys.
But this is a very interesting discussion. The reason why I bring this up is that I'm doing probably once a month or every other week, hopefully, and I'm really going to do it. Is I want to have these discussions with people in the comic community. Is why you should come to Marvel or go to DC, and creativity versus having a career and long-term careers. There's a reason why I get certain guests on my show, and I want a guy like Ebats on my show because it adds credibility to my name, and then it also benefits you. And I also like to find new talent because if I interview 100 new creators, statistically, 3 or 4 of them in the next 5 years are going to be a big deal. And then hopefully I could be like, hey, I interviewed them when they were young, and maybe they'll come back on, or maybe I will get respect post-word because I'll throw it back up on Twitter and be like, oh, that's really cool. So that's how I think about this, and I'm curious how you think about it, because this is something that nobody's talking about in comics. And I'm also looking at it very differently than everybody else. Because I'm not in the industry. I am next to it as a podcaster and as a host of a show. And so I have a different view, and I also have an economic interest as a shareholder of some of these companies.
Yeah, that's awesome. There is one DC comic that I would love to do that I've already written a bunch of scripts for, and that's I would love to do a Scooby-Doo series. So that's like the one license that I would love to tackle. I just have such a strong idea for it, and I'm honestly the biggest Scooby-Doo fan you'll ever meet. I've seen the original Scooby-Doo Where Are You through about 4 or 5 times, Mystery Incorporated 3 times. I'm rewatching it with my girlfriend right now. So that's a little nerdy
So
detail.
I'm going to ask you a question because we're going to really test what is the vehicle called in Scooby-Doo?
The Mystery Machine?
Yes, yes.
That's
You know
easy.
why? People think it's called the Mystery Van.
Yeah.
No, it's the Mystery Machine. It's not
God,
the van.
right. It's so obvious.
No. It's not though. I was watching like trivia with all these people, and I was in a trivia game, and I'm like, it's the Mystery Machine, guys. Trust me. And they're like, no, you're wrong, Andrew. You're wrong. And I'm like, trust me. If I'm wrong, I'll buy everybody around. We got it right. But like everybody's like, it's the van. I'm like, no, it's not the van.
It's alliterative too. It's so obvious, man.
No. It's obvious to us.
Yeah.
This is the problem.
I need to make more friends who are Scooby-Doo nerds. I've been trying to find some. I've been wearing Scooby-Doo shirts everywhere I go, hoping somebody comments on them. But alas,
You got to go on the Scooby-Doo Discord.
yeah. I've gotten a chance to talk to some screenwriters who've worked for Scooby-Doo, like Be Cool Scooby-Doo and Mystery Incorporated, and they were good mentors to me back when I was learning first how to script things back when I was 15. So I'm really grateful for that. I would love to be involved with the franchise in any capacity, anyway, one day. Hopefully, I get there.
Well, right now, Warner Bros. Owns that. They own the Flintstones. They own most of Hanna-Barbera, and all that stuff is super interesting. And then I think Neil Adams did a bunch of covers for Scooby-Doo that were cool. And I'm not as big a Scooby-Doo fan as you, but I enjoy Scooby-Doo, and I enjoy what Scooby-Doo does and what Shaggy does too. I'm still looking for what's happening in the back of the van and why there's always smoke coming out. But I'll just go around in a circle.
What did he say in the Scooby-Doo movie, Mary Jane? That's his favorite name.
Hey! I'm just going around in a circle.
You want to know something? You probably already know this, but James Gunn wrote those original Scooby-Doo movies, the live-action ones. I love that fact. That's how
I speak in code. If anybody who knows what I'm referring to when I say I'm going around in a circle, they'll figure it out soon enough. That's kind of funny though that James Gunn wrote that stuff, and James Gunn is a unique individual for sure.
I like him. I like his style. It's good.
Yeah, I like his Guardian work, and I definitely like the new Suicide Squad.
I think the new Suicide Squad is my favorite thing he's done because it feels like it encompasses his entire career, you know, working first gory horror movies and then ensembles and then superhero movies.
See, I think Peacemaker was better than the new Suicide movie. I really do.
That's a hard disagree there. And I liked Peacemaker, but that Suicide Squad movie does everything a Suicide Squad movie should do.
Oh, I mean, I love the Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
The reason why I have the first appearance of Amanda Waller in a CGC book.
Oh, that's awesome. I wish I had that. Yeah, I've
it's not an expensive book. It's like a $70 book and a 9.6, 9.8. It's not expensive, but it's a pain to find.
Wow, that's good to know. I'll check it out.
Because I just love Amanda Waller, and she's an underrated character by far.
Oh, she's a great protagonist, great villain. She can be a lot of things. Very well written character. I love what John Ostrander did with her. and her origin story in that original run of the comics.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like what was it? Like the 4-part miniseries that she was introduced in? Oh, good stuff.
Yeah,
Just old school stuff. Fascinating character. And anything because as you stated, she could be anything. And I like her as a government operative because
hmm
that's what she's good at. And whether you like what she's doing or not, because let's be realistic, the Suicide Squad should not be liked. They're the type of people you call in when the Justice League is out in space.
hmm
And you need a problem solved, and you need it solved without anybody knowing you're solving the problem. That's what the Suicide Squad is. And it's great.
It's a great concept. I love it. The Dirty Dozen, but with superheroes.
Oh, it's so good. It's
Yeah,
so good. And the second one was so much better than the first one of Suicide Squad.
easily.
But it wasn't an acting problem in the first one. The talent was there. It
hmm
was the script. It's completely the script, and it wasn't graphics. It was the script. So that was
Yeah.
a disaster as a movie.
Forgot the strengths of the concept. It didn't play into what the Suicide Squad should be.
I mean, you had Will Smith who was great. You had Margot Robbie who was great, and you had a few other characters who were great as well. And
Yeah.
oh man, they just blew. But I digress. It's the worst. But yeah, no, because getting back to horror, because again, I'm not a big horror guy. I'm actually wanting to write a horror comic, but I want to write it as a one shot. I want to make people like look over their shoulder and be like terrified to go to bed. And I don't want to be at a con. I want like a mom to be like, "You ruined my son. My son can't sleep now." And be like, "Mission accomplished."
Yeah, you
Um,
should go for it. Do it.
can I just have you write a testimony on that, please? Thank you.
Man. When you
Don't
get
buy
paid,
this
I'll
book.
write a testimony for you.
Don't buy this book. My son can't sleep anymore, and every time we go to the store, he's looking over his shoulder. Anonymous mom. I'll
All
put that
right.
right on the back of the book. It'll sell me more books than anything else.
Yeah.
But I digress right there. But again, I'm not a big horror guy. I really do like to sleep at night. So, but I think it's very interesting. I'm actually very curious where you even think horror is going. Because as I stated, places like Second Sight Publishing and Scout and a variety of other publishers are popping up now doing horror books and doing things of that nature. And there's obviously the dam has broke. And now we're getting subsections of horror where there are stalker books, there are psychological thrillers, there are books that really test the imagination, and there's books that just make you question what you're enjoying and seeing and understanding. There's books on all sorts of terrifying things in a lot of ways, not to mention the manga side of things. And so, where do you foresee it going? Because clearly it's on the up and up.
Right. Well, there's definitely a rise in prestige horror, I think people call it. Really art house horror comics and movies. Horror has always been around. It's always been a staple of storytelling, and it always will continue to be. But it's the one genre that evolves most, I believe. The tropes are ever changing, and if you watch a horror movie from the 1930s, it's not scary to you. You'll read reviews about people watching the original Dracula and running out of the theater screaming. But today it's tame by comparison. And you can watch horror movies even as recent as like the 80s, 90s, and they don't really hold up as well. Uh, they might hold up well for fun viewing, but in terms of scare factor, there's a level of disconnect there.
To even talk about that, and sorry for interrupting, but
Sure.
one of the things that's going on is that, and I don't want to get too much, and we're recording this and it's live on March 16th, and obviously the entire thing in Ukraine is going on with war right
Mhm.
now. And then the reason why I bring that up is not to get too political on that point per se, but I think this elevates a point is that what we had in war 50 years ago is not the same we have today. And what terrifies somebody in a war 50 years ago will not terrify them today.
Right.
That's not saying it wasn't horrible, but with horror, what scared me 20 years ago wouldn't scare me today.
Right. You get desensitized to it a bit. You get used to it.
And it's also the idea that, I don't know about you, but I've been desensitized to a bunch of stuff. So as I was saying, I was desensitized in 9/11, and I've grown up in a very different world than preferably my parents and even my sister. She was in high school when 9/11 happened. So it's the idea that, so for me with horror, how do you continue to raise the bar? Because that's a big question, and certain things always will raise the bar. If a kidnapping happens and you're in a hostage negotiation and the kidnapper is tormenting the parents over and over and over, that could be very, very scary if it's done correctly. Or if you have a kidnapping inside a big mansion and you don't know what's going on, or Resident Evil 1 is still scary to some degree.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you tell me that I'm playing Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil 4 is not scary anymore. It used to be back when it first came out. Now it's not a scary game.
Right. Yeah, with Final Boy, I wanted to try and resurrect the slasher genre because it's been dead for a while. It's interesting that you bring up some of America's political climate because with the rise in school shootings and violence and stuff like that, in real life, the slasher genre kind of died for a while. You had Scream and a couple come out, but it was thriving in the 80s and then it died suddenly. And I believe that's due to the rise of real life violence because the novelty of seeing teenagers getting killed was suddenly lost on people because it's happening. And with Final Boy, I want to resurrect this slasher genre in a fun way because I want to see more slasher movies. I'm a big fan. I really love them. But the
You're
thing is,
self-interested.
yeah.
It's all about you being selfish. So let's just acknowledge it and get it out of the way.
Yeah, this is whole vanity project. This is all about my own selfishness. But I want the Final Boy to be fun. I want the comedy to hit and make people laugh along with the danger. I didn't try to raise the bar in terms of horror with the series. There's gore and there's tense scenes, certainly, but it's all with an element of fun and comedy. When I do write like a real horror story, I want it to be more about modern anxieties. I've been reading The Nice House on the Lake by James Tynion. Have you checked that out yet?
I have not, but I know. Actually, I read the first issue.
Yeah,
But
I'm also
I don't know much about it, but I know it's really well done because he's a great writer.
he's one of my favorites working right now. He's great, and it's about modern fears, modern anxieties, and so that's what I want my other horror stories to be about today and our fears now. But with Final Boy, it's more of a cheesy 80s slasher done really well, hopefully.
Yeah, no, because I'm always wondering, and this is my thing. And at some point, as I stated, I want to do sort of adult comic hangouts, just as bonus content. And I want to. This is one of the topics, and tomorrow I want to talk about. Hopefully, a few people are showing up. Talk about why you back a Kickstarter, but at some point, I want to talk about the idea that, how do you raise the bar where every idea has been spun out? And with horror, how do you raise the bar? With a mecha series, how do you raise the bar? With action, how do you raise the bar? Or do you actually go the opposite direction and lower the bar intentionally? And then these are all great questions, and I don't know because obviously with my show, I'm trying to raise the bar, get better guests, get better questions, get it more refined, get more into deeper issues in things, and actually have more significant discussions. But it is tricky when you're trying to figure out how to, I guess, evolve and expand and go into new territory. I'm a big dirty realism guy, and dirty realism is hard now in writing because I hate to say it, but everything that's dirty is sort of mainstream now. Used to be going to a strip club was a bad thing. Now going to a strip club is not that bad of a thing. It's not frowned upon the same way it was 30 years ago. And so that's something that I'm just fascinated with as a thought type of leader type of person. is that I'm like, hey, how do you raise that? So that's kind of why I'm just super curious about everything and everybody. And it's a question everybody's going to get from here on out on my show.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating to see how things change, especially genres. They really evolve. Horror genres are constantly changing. And Final Boy is different from any slasher that you've seen before because there's this concept that I cannot wait to introduce that's never been done before in the slasher. It's completely original to me, and that's the reason that I started writing it. And I can't wait for people to check that out.
I am not going to be a dick today, and I am not going to take guesses live at the very least.
Yeah.
But I have three theories, but I will keep those to myself privately.
Hey, they're wrong. I'm sorry, but it's impossible to guess with the information at this point.
I know how I would go about it, but let's just say I'll speak in code. I will pull what is known as a black clover, and anybody who's seen black clover knows exactly what I'm referring to, and that's all I'm gonna say because that leaves it enough. Where there's three possibilities, but there's only one correct one, and my solution to where you're going with the book. But we're gonna table it. I'm not gonna ruin anything. And I would say another thing, but I'm not gonna mention my favorite musical song either, because that will give the ending away to the first issue. So I'm gonna table that as well. That is zipped up. But I do obviously you're coming on to Kickstarter March 22nd. You're gonna have tons of rewards. You're gonna have a bunch of covers, and I don't want to ruin any of that. I want everybody to be ready for that. And I don't even know what covers you have or anything of that nature. So we're not gonna dive too much into that. But I know you got at least one or two variants coming.
Right. There's a beautiful variant cover that Marlon Souza and Danilo Leal made, and it's pretty incredible. And I love the main cover as well, especially. The tagline, I hope, doesn't ruin the cover because it's a little cheesy, intentionally cheesy. But it's just beautiful art. I was so happy I was able to find these guys. I really lucked out with them.
Yeah, no, because I think I've seen it, and I think both are public. At least one of them is, I know, and I think it's on your Twitter.
Yeah,
But
it's on my Twitter, my Instagram.
I'm going to give you a chance to promote yourself in a second, but I do actually want to talk a little bit about Kickstarter and crowdfunding before we get there. And obviously, you're brand new, and I think you've backed a few campaigns before. So what is this like for you, knowing that you're coming into it on the other side now? Because this is your first thing that you've created, and I can tell you from my position is that I backed about 35, I want to say. And it's very different once you create one versus once when you're just a backer. And it's almost like you can't go backwards. You can't not then go create something ever again or look at somebody's Kickstarter the same way.
Oh, so much work goes into it. I've been feeling compelled to really back a lot more now, and I will once I get the money. But it's I'll tell you one thing: it's nerve-wracking. It's very anxiety-inducing to create a Kickstarter and to have to promote yourself. I'm a very introverted person. I don't like to really put myself out there in the world, and so having to do so for this, it's tough. But I'm managing. I'm doing it, and there's not a minute that goes by in the day where I wonder, well, is it really gonna be seen by people? Are really gonna buy it? I'm confident in the product, especially the art. I think people will love that, but I'm a little nervous that people will not see it just due to a advertisement standpoint.
It's complicated because there's a lot of projects out there. It's also convincing. It's also getting eyes on projects. Also, and I'm very honest from a consumer position, I am beyond selective now. And I have to be. And it's the idea that it's a space issue for me. Where am I going to store everything? Am I interested in the product? Do I like the person who's behind it? Because I hate to say this, there are some assholes in comics There's some bad people. There are people who have very interesting pasts. And also I look at the way people interact with each other and interact with their fans. And, you know, there are people I won't back their product because they have said things to a first-time creator that should have never been said. There are people who have attacked me who I will not back their projects. You know, and I don't really care if they're watching. They know exactly who they are. And so that's the problem. And then there are people who know exactly who I might not back their projects either because they attacked me. And, you know, it's very complicated, all that. And so, and then I look at stretch goals, I look at covers, I look at, are you paying your art team? Are you paying your writers? Are you underpaying them? Are you treating them well? Do you deliver on time? And all that stuff. And it's complicated if I'll back somebody's project, not to mention that there are plenty of projects I'm like, I didn't see this and you were running for 27 days and now I saw it. And that's the other thing too, is that algorithms are complicated right now.
I've been having to learn that.
So it's complicated. And you know, and then also look, I mean, I pushed my thing out and I got funded 114%, but it took a lot of effort and it is complicated. But I am curious where you view Kickstarter as a platform, because obviously my campaign is slightly different. My campaign is a pre-order / kickstart / keep me in the game for another year move. Some people use it for legitimately, hey, I need half the artwork still done. And we're legitimately getting this thing funded and kickstarting it. Some people say, hey, look, I have $4,000 and I need another 2 to get it to this point. And so they're handling it that way, and it's a collective project. And then some people use it as a pre-order form. So I'm curious how you're viewing Kickstarter as a platform and even crowdfunding and where it's even going, and even if it's sustainable, because that's a whole nother box where, because I hear that as well. And sorry for throwing a lot of questions, but I hear people saying, I don't want to be on Kickstarter permanently.
Yeah, I would say I don't want to be on Kickstarter permanently, but I think it's great. I love the platform. It's going to be a great starting point for me, and I might be on it for years to come. But I definitely want to transition to maybe making my own publishing company or joining one. I think that would be really exciting. And also, I just want to let people know I'm a big believer in paying your artists up front. You should definitely do that if you're making a comic. That's what we did. And that's partially how I was able to secure such talented artists and colorists. I tapped into my emergency fund for some of this to get the comic made. So I really hope it pans out. I hope people back it. But yeah, back to Kickstarter. I don't know how long it'll last, you know, the site, but I definitely hope it lasts a while. And it's a great place for comics, indie comics, to get out there. I looked at other places like Indiegogo, and those are great as well. But Kickstarter really seems to be the place where it's happening, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, Indiegogo is interesting depending on where you align politically, where your project is on certain levels, and I got no problem saying what it is. I have no affiliations. I am a neutral party. I'm just an interviewer who just wants. I'll talk to anybody and everybody.
Sure.
And that's what my show is. But clearly, there are big players on Kickstarter. There are big players on Indiegogo. And if you're a first-time creator, I think that you can have a runaway book. I really do. I think if you have a product, I think that anybody can do it. And I don't see why you couldn't do it either. Personally, where if you have a good product, I don't think it matters if you're a first-time creator. I don't. I just think you have to understand what you're doing. Now, you're not going to do Brian Polito numbers or EBS numbers. And the reason why is that those guys are just well known. But a first-time creator can have a $20,000 book. No question about it. Whether you have the capabilities of delivering that book is different. That's a different problem. Delivery and actually getting funded are two separate concepts.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to deliver the book one way or another. But yeah, thank you for the encouragement. That really means a lot.
So it's like I was a first-time creator. There was no doubt in my mind that technically I was hoping to do 2,000 was what I was hoping for. And I thought I could do it. Obviously, there were some other things that happened, and I think that if I do come back for a season 4, I'll be aiming for 15 to 1800, and I think I can get around that number. But I'm going to keep my goal extremely low.
I did want to keep my goal low for this first time because I have no idea how much I'm going to make. This is my first time doing this. Yeah.
I have a friend and his goal is $400 to $800. That's expensive. His goal should have been $3,000.
Yeah.
It's if he was at $3,000, it would have been an easier path. And but I also believe that everybody says, oh, you do 1 issue, 2 issue, 3 issue, 4 issues, and then you make your money in the trade. I think that is stupid as fuck. I think, and I got no problem calling it out because that is a horrible business decision. And I'm not a Kickstarter expert, but I'm willing to challenge everybody and anybody in that position. You should be figuring out how to make money on every single book.
Yeah.
You should be. And this is a business, it's not a charity, and you should not say, well, I'm going to make my money back in the trade. That's a horrible business decision. And that is horrible business advice. And anybody who says that should be ashamed of themselves. And I got no problem saying that live, which I just did. No problem. If you want to do this as a hobby and you're kickstarting it as a hobby, that's fine. But if this is a business, you need to figure out how to make money on every single book. And on every single Kickstarter, you need to take a distribution. And that's just a reality. That's just a fact checker. But maybe you don't get to that point on your first book, and that's fine. But if you're not making money and taking a distribution on your second book, then again, that is a horrible business strategy and position. If you're saying, well, I'm going to do 7 issues and put it in an omnibus and then I'll make my money. No. You need to figure out how to do it. And that's not directed at you per se. That's directed at the entire community.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to try and figure out a way to profit off each one if possible. But I would like to do a trade one day and, recuperate some. Not the horrible strategy, but I would like to see a trade of it done because...
Oh, I'm not saying trades are good too. You should be making money before you put a trade out. The trade should not be your break-even point, is where I'm going with this. Meaning that if by issue 3, you should be cash flow positive at minimum. At minimum. If you're not cash flow positive and you've treated it like seed money and that you have debt essentially or personal debt on the book, which means you borrow from yourself, you pay yourself back, but you didn't have a seed money that you take a distribution from, and the trade is the solution to that problem. It's not a horrible solution, but it's not a good one either. But again, I'm getting us both canceled. People will not like when I say that.
Okay.
Because they don't have a better solution at the moment, and that's the whole issue with what I was saying. And people know exactly how I feel. And I'm going to continue to say it. I can say, okay, if you don't like my solution, your solution isn't much better. So that's what we do on this show, guys. We actually call things out what they should be, and you are more than welcome to disagree with me at any given point.
No, I actually agree with you on that point. So, hey.
But that's where we're at. And then I am going to ask you one more question before I give you the opportunity to self-promote, before we get both of us in trouble. And I get you canceled before you launch a book and before I get to season 4 of this show, which there's a good chance I'm not going to make it to season 4. But
It
has nothing to do with talent. It has nothing to do with talent. It has everything to do with the fact that the last bunch of guests, great interviews, not maybe the kosherest of talent in discussion and fun interviews, some of my best work. But it was a little risque, for lack of a better word. Great stuff. I had Jim Noble on, and Jim Noble does pretty much a book that is almost straight porn. So, the show's just gone downhill, everybody. The entertainment's up on the up. The show is just going down. But you will be entertained and thoroughly entertained.
I think it's a good place to be, though. You want people to be entertained.
Hey, as long as I'm getting paid, I really don't care. So, hey, money changes you, and I like nice things. But anyway, I am curious about how you feel about conventions and where you think they're going from a complete selling point to even just a networking place versus selling online and having a bigger digital footprint, and also having more of a fan base online to sell books. And whether you're selling physical copies of books or digital copies or a combination of both, or even just having an online presence, because COVID has shifted things dramatically.
Oh, definitely. COVID has changed the game for sure. Definitely online indie comics, people ordering them. That's the way things are heading. But I'm still going to do conventions more for my sake because I think they're fun. I love going to conventions, and I'm really thrilled about the opportunity to be able to do book signings at comic book stores and stuff. I set up some opportunities there. Um, so I'm just really excited for that. It's been my dream for a long time to be able to do a book signing because I've been to so many and I just daydream like, oh man, I wish that was me. I love having a venue to talk about my work and just being able to talk about my story to a room full of people that are like my captive audience. I have them. That's the dream right there, for a writer at least.
Just start a podcast. It's much cheaper.
Maybe I'll take you up on that. You could be my first guest.
Yeah. I could find you like 15 better guests, but I will happily be your first if you start a show.
Awesome.
Happily. I might even pay you to be on your show.
Oh man, that's sweet.
But obviously, we've been talking about a lot of stuff, and I do want to give you an opportunity to self promote. So, obviously, I know your Kickstarter, the pre launch page is live right now. I think that just got
Yeah.
approved. I put it up in the description up above so everybody can check it out. But where can people find the Kickstarter? Sign up for the notification. You're launching on March 22nd.
Hmm.
Where can people follow you on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook? um, TikTok, website is a good one, email lists, all that stuff.
Right. So I don't have a website yet. I'm working on that, but you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at the same handle. It's at Sam Carter Writer, SAMCARTER Writer. And yeah, you can find me there. There'll be updates about Final Boy, and that pre-launch page is up in the description. All you gotta do is click that little button, and you'll be notified when the Kickstarter page launches, and you're able to pre-order Final Boy.
Yeah, and as I've been saying, one of the things is you have to support indie comic creators.
Hmm.
And what that means is that when they have a Kickstarter, you have to back the Kickstarter or an
Yeah.
Indiegogo or a Zoop or any other type of crowdfunding. When they have it, you need to back it. If they got a Patreon and you're not a big Kickstarter person, back their Patreon, because all of that stuff goes a long way. Whether you're backing $1, a $5 digital tier, or a $20 physical copy book, indie comic creators are not Marvel, they're not DC, and every dollar helps to make that book happen, and it helps to make the next one happen, and it helps to keep the lights on to make the third, fourth, or fifth book happen, or other series happen. And it goes a long way. Furthermore, I get it. Money's tight. Everybody's in different economic situations at different points. If you can't afford to back a Kickstarter, one of the things that I recommend to everybody is that you share out the project. And
That
so,
would be great.
yeah, so share it out on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter. You don't have to share it out like every 5 minutes, but if you just tweet about it even once a week, it goes a long way. Or better yet, if you know somebody is a big slasher fan or horror fan, just shoot them in their inbox. Be like, hey, I saw this cool project. I just wanted to let you know that it's going out there. Or if you really want to be helpful, you could share out this interview just into a Facebook group or on your personal wall. That helps tremendously as well, because that lets people know, hey, this is interesting. There's a discussion going on. That's something that's beyond helpful as well.
Yeah,
Also, if you
I
do,
will be sharing this on my Instagram. We gotta get you to season 4.
yeah, I need to get to season 4, guys. I absolutely need to get to season 4 here. Season 4 will be next year, January. So we got like 9 more months, everybody, and I'm probably gonna get to season 4 very easily. We'll find out if my Kickstarter funds. Otherwise, or I have sponsorships, which I may or may not be selling a big sponsorship in the next few months. which will not just get me to season 4, it'll get me to season 10, which will be really nice. That'll actually take off a lot of pressure, but that's neither here nor there. As I was stating, also when you back on Kickstarter, what you should do is you should share it out. Kickstarter makes it super easy to tweet it and put it on Facebook. Just click that button. It helps tremendously, and it lets people know. Big deal, changes the game, and it's free. And social media is free, guys. So please actually share our projects. As far as I'm concerned about me, I appreciate when people actually like, share, comment on my interviews, and engage with me, have discussions, share out my content. It goes a long way in my world. I also appreciate that if you want to advertise on my show, live reads, I have the Buy Me a Coffee stuff up there. And so you could do that, or you could DM me privately. There's also something on Facebook, on my Facebook page, where you could actually click and we could work out a price if you want to advertise your product. You got something that you want to just throw out there. I appreciate that as well. I appreciate donations to the show. And if you would like to actually buy merch, this is my metal card of DJ Croft, who is an up-and-coming cosplayer, and he's going to be up in Philly Wizard World in a few weeks. And so there's only 121 of these out there, and he's actually going to be up there and signing a bunch of them. So you can pick it up from him. And that logo, which is the Pop Anime Comics stuff, which is also up there, as you can see, is actually going to be retired in the next few months and be exclusive to my other show. So this will most likely never ever be on a metal card in this fashion, and a new logo will be up there. So if you like my show, you want to support this, all the money goes to this show with these metal cards, and it's up on eBay. So that's another way how to support if you like products. And metal cards, 121, and once those 121s are sold, then I'm not printing any more of those. And then this is a limited 50, and she looks like a big-breasted psycho killer for a reason. And this is limited to 50. I have 40 of these up on eBay right now. Once those 40 are gone, I am not reprinting this one either. This is super limited as well. Again, click that thing. It's metal cards. You can pick up your metal cards if you want them. Super cool. And once I get rid of these, I'm probably going to order a different set of some cool stuff, and I'm possibly in the middle of working out a license deal with a few people for metal cards as well that are super cool in that fashion. So that's something out there that you can support. And if you need your books printed, use Mix'em, because, well, Andrew Davis, 5% off, makes a big difference. And I have a BCW supplies code, which is Pop Anime Comics, for 10% off your entire order at BCW Supplies. Use it at checkout and save yourself 10% when you buy your bag boards and long boxes and CGC boxes. So please go use those links. They mean something. Trying to save everybody money. And on that note, as my voice is going hoarse here, I'm going to give you the final word.
Oh, well, Final Boy is going live March 22nd. So if you're a fan of slashers or you know somebody who is, go check it out. We're going to have a good time for these next 7 issues.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. And on that note, everybody, that is a wrap.
Awesome.